everybody. Good evening and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. My name is Don Arleth. Latvian Prime Minister Iveca Selina resigned after the collapse of her coalition government, triggered by a dispute over national security and drone incidents near the Russian border. Earlier, Defense Minister Andris Sprūds stepped down over criticism of Latvia's response and delays in strengthening air defenses. The crisis left the government without a parliamentary majority ahead of the elections later this year. Now joining us to discuss is Wierenga, lecturer at the Baltic Defense College. Louis, good evening. Great to see you, and thanks for joining us.
Good evening, Don. Great to be back.
Yes, so we have this political crisis here in Latvia. Do you think Prime Minister Selina miscalculated politically by dismissing Andris Sprūds without securing coalition backing first?
Yeah, that seems to me to be particularly interesting, considering that on the 3rd of October, they're scheduled to have an election anyway. And I don't know what the reason behind that was. I mean, publicly, she has stated that security is the first and foremost concern. But, you know, we also have to make sure that we are careful about, any country in the alliance is careful about not dismissing somebody because of an incident like that, because of the phase zero, or what some people like to call hybrid attempts. That could be a way that Russia would try to potentially manipulate governments into trying to do things. So we have to make sure, I think, that everything is stable. And it looks like it will be. I mean, the Latvian president has today started to meet with all 6 of the parties in parliament today. And Latvian, or New Unity, the party of the prime minister, is polling 4th behind the party of the former defense minister, which is polling 2nd. So I'm not sure what was the decision behind that, but maybe she thought it would reinvigorate some support for Jan Latvian ahead of October.
Yeah, and you know, it's strange. I interviewed former Defense Minister Sprūds last week here in Warsaw, and you know, it's difficult when you have these Ukrainian drones flying around, and it's my understanding these were Ukrainian drones. I don't think there should be any consequences for that. I understand that it's a problem, but Poland had its own incident of an interceptor missile fired from Ukraine. 2 people were killed in that incident, and of course, it very quietly disappeared. An overreaction, perhaps?
Well, I think a lot of it was political in advance of the election. Andris Sprūds is from the Progressive Party, which up until this incident was actually part of a 3-party coalition with New Unity, the party of the prime minister. And maybe that he was seen as a potential rival, I'm not sure. But I think that the big incident domestically wasn't so much that there were drones that flew over the airspace, but residents of Rezekne, the city in Latgale, which is in the eastern part of the country, they were alerted about an hour late after the drones crashed near Rezekne, because there's an alert system. Estonia has something similar in place, and the message went out late. I think that was used as part of the main issue. But you're right. I mean, these types of things, we have to be vigilant. We have to be careful. But the Latvian defense and security forces are. They're actually quick learning about drones. You know, they produce more drones than anyone in Europe except for Ukraine. So, you know, I don't think it was a major issue. I think this is really a political issue.
Yeah, that was my initial reaction as well. And then there are some threads about the agriculture and timber and corruption investigation. You know, how much of an incident will this be ahead of these upcoming elections?
Well, I think it would probably be not. It's hard to say in a succinct manner. Probably it won't be a major issue, because usually people in this particular country are not too pleased with politicians overall. There are some minor exceptions. If you look at the polling, and also I would say another thing about elections in Latvia is you usually have many parties. I think it was like 19 parties that contested the last election. So you have a large amount of parties to choose from. Usually around 6 or 7 of them will make it into the Saima. And I think that right now, the party New Unity, which is a very stable party that usually takes the top share of the votes after a party that made it or did not make it into parliament the last time, called Harmony, they've dropped to a very low support. I think that they're somewhere between 10 and 11%, and there's only two parties that are polling below them. Interestingly enough, I mentioned that the progressives are second, but the first party is a party called Latvia First. That's kind of like some might describe them populist style anti-system parties. So this might give them a boost because their political message is an anti-establishment message, and you know how it goes. But I don't think it's going to be major. I think most people already have their minds made up, or the sentiment is we don't know who to vote for because there's nobody that is really, we want stability. The citizens want stability, especially what's going on now in the security architecture. So,
Right? Is it possible we could see
the security environment?
a deeper fragmentation within society? It seems like with so many political parties vying, for seats in parliament, and plus the people not really knowing who exactly to go behind. I mean, could we see more political upheaval? And where does Russia fit into to these domestic politics?
Well, I would say that because of what I just mentioned, the threshold to start a new political party is so low that you have around 18, 19 parties that are contesting any given election. They don't all get in, but you have parties that try to cater to the Russian-speaking vote. And up until the last parliamentary election, there was only one major party that always made it into the parliament. It was called Harmony, or Sashkanya in Latvian, and that party did not. They took a stance that was not so hard on Russia after the second phase of their invasion of Ukraine, but it didn't convince enough people domestically to vote for them, and it also alienated some of their more hardliners. And so now you have a couple of parties, one main party called Stabilitate, or Stability, and up until recently that was seen as one of the more aggressive, almost pro-Kremlin narrative parties. Well, their leader is now in Belarus and can't come back because there's an arrest warrant out for him. So now you have a Latvian parliament with a bunch of independent people in the opposition coming from that party. So I think that the sentiment, if you look at the average European parliamentary system, there's actually more choice of where to go based on where you sit on the left-right divide and on the establishment, anti-establishment divide.
All right, well, we got about 4.5 minutes left, and big news here in Poland, of course, alarm in Poland, the surprise announcement of U.S. troops not making their rotation. So the number of temporarily deployed troops here in Poland will remain the same, but the surprise announcement catching people off guard that the rotation will not happen for some reason or another. And we've seen a lot of backlash in the United States about this, and of course, a lot of questions being raised here. What's your impression of this announcement?
It's very strange. And this is confusing Poland, and this is confusing other allies. Not that I would be happy about it, but if this were we've already, the U.S. administration has also discussed this about Germany, but we're at a country not on the eastern flank. I wouldn't be so surprised, but Poland and the Baltic states are touted by many in the administration, including Secretary Hegseth, who made the decision and made the announcement, as being a model ally. So I found that to be very, very strange, because just a couple of days ago, I was on one of your shows, and I was discussing the possibility of some of the troops that were going to be pulled out of Germany going to actually Poland or the Baltic states. So what I can say is that I don't think that this necessarily means that the U.S. is not committed to the security of Poland. There are some out that say this, but the defense minister said that Poland is the most stable American ally in Europe, and there's no cause for concern about the troop reduction. But what is somewhat concerning now is that the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs has warned that Russia is likely to reposition forces towards the eastern flank once the war of aggression against Ukraine ends. So I think that we'll probably see in a day or two either a solution to this issue or at least more of an explanation about this in Poland. But I don't think that there's any cause for alarm because the U.S. and Poland remain to be very close.
Right, and the government here in Warsaw is downplaying and definitely saying that it's no big deal. It's a simple question of logistics. I mean, I don't know. I'm just prodding, but is it possible these troops could be intended or used for something else? The situation in Iran continues. There's no end to the opening up of the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, is that a possibility, or is this maybe a money-saving issue? What are your thoughts?
It's probably either of the two. I mean, it makes no sense for the U.S. to punish Poland based on the nature of that relationship with President Trump. So my bet, I mean, there's about 10,000 plus U.S. soldiers in the country anyway. So if you look at the force posture that the Americans have in Poland, I think that should be highlighted every time that this issue is raised, because then it paints a slightly different picture. But 4,000 troops, that's not 400, that's 4,000. So that is a force multiplier. I would be willing to bet that those are going to be used somewhere in the Middle Eastern theater with Iran, or maybe it could be a money-saving thing. But it looks like that's where the primary focus of the administration's shift is going to be, is trying to get the upper hand and maintain some kind of dominance in the diplomatic relationship, using the M as a clear military instrument of power.
Okay, about 30 seconds left. Does it affect our safety here on the eastern flank?
No, I don't think so, because there's also the nuclear umbrella that NATO has under the United States. There's the troops that I mentioned that are already there in Poland. There's the nature of the close relationship between Poland and Washington that does not change and has not changed under President Trump. And on the last but not least, Poland takes security very seriously. They consistently meet their defense targets, and they are ramping up their military, as are the vast majority of other European allies.
Louis Wierenga, lecturer at the Baltic Defense College. Always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Have a great weekend. Thanks for having me.
And you too have a very good weekend. Thank you for watching, and stay with us for more here on TVP World. Goodbye.